Forward. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very latest CADS podcast. As you can see, my background has changed. We're doing things a little bit differently tonight. We're going to be going and looking at the financial report that was recently released. Now, I am not a money guy. Ask my wife. Terrible with these things. But what I've always said is if you don't know something, ask a smart person. And that's exactly what I've done. I have gone to the smartest person I know when it comes to finances. And I've asked Sam to join us, and he is here tonight to talk to us about all things Tottenham Hotspur financials and giving his fair and unbiased opinion on it. Sam, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. Weather's amazing. Spurs have just won. Like, I can't complain. Life's good. And you're still here somehow. We're not going to go into that. We're going to talk about the finances today. But yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast, Stu.
All right. So, Sam, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, what it is you do?
Yeah, I've got a background in transaction services and M&A. I worked in that for quite a number of years. And I've now transitioned into a head of finance or finance director type role. So that's what I do at the moment. So I'm used to working on massive spreadsheets and reading through boring annual statements, like the one we're going to discuss.
Boring to some, not to everyone. I do like a good spreadsheet, I have to say. Okay, and just for a little bit of background, you and I have known each other for what? 10, 15 years, something like that?
Yeah, at least 15.
Like person to person. Online, it's been probably 20 years plus. Yeah. But Sam was probably the person, if I ever wanted to talk about football finances with, or financial fair play or anything like that, he was always the person to go to because he knew what was going on. So when it came to this discussion, you were the first person I thought of. All right. So, Sam, the financial results, been a lot of talk about it. A lot of people are somewhat impressed by some of the numbers, but unimpressed by the tone of the statement that's been given. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I used to look at these financial statements a lot more. I hadn't done so for quite a number of years. And I have to say, like, when I downloaded them and had a look at our financials, I was quite shocked by the level of our losses, to be honest. Because you often hear about Spurs being one of the most profitable clubs in the league, one of the most profitable clubs in the world. But actually, when you sort of deep dive into the financials, I think it's not as sexy as it looks like. I guess the thing that's worrying to me is that if this is a sort of good financial situation, then I'm quite worried about what a bad financial situation is when you kind of compare us to the other clubs. But yeah, let's go into some of the details. But I thought maybe we could start off by having a look at the chairman's statement, because there was a lot of noise that came from that when the financial statements came out last week. But I think what people need to also keep in mind is that financial statements, they're not necessarily for the supporters. They're usually for the auditors. They're for the clients. They're for the shareholders. So I mean, I think Levy has come in here with a couple of sort of talking points, but I mean, usually speaking, these aren't for us, the fans, right? So I mean, when he's talking about our profits and stuff like that, it's really trying to reassure all the third parties that we're involved with, whether that's some of our suppliers, our sponsors. So yeah, I just wanted to give that context. But I mean, first thing he says, we're currently 14th in the Premier League, highly challenging season on the pitch. We are, however, in the quarterfinals of the Europa League. Winning the competition would see welcome silverware, yes, and mean qualification for the Champions League. I think that would be a double yes, because that to me is the most important thing, I think, from Levy's standpoint at the moment. It's getting back into Europe. When I look at our P&L, the money we make when we're in Europe, between the money that UEFA pays us plus all the additional match day revenue you're going to get, we're talking at least 75 to 80 million pounds probably. So that's a good 15% of our turnover. And that literally is going to disappear if we're not in Europe next season. So again, when we're thinking forward to the summer transfer window, maybe, I mean, that's money that we don't have and that we're not going to be able to spend this summer. So our revenues this year so again, the financial statements that I'm looking at were the season that ended in June 2024. So it's basically at the end of Ange's first season. So just for context, the cutoff point being the 30th of June means that this is before we signed Solanke, before we signed Odeberg, before we did most of our, before we signed Bergvall, before we did most of our business in the summer.
Yeah.
But these accounts do include the sale of Harry Kane, right? Because we sold Kane in, what was it, end of July, I think, of the previous year. But anyway, our revenue was down. It was 550 million pounds in 23, 530 in 24. So that's down about 5%. And really, the thing that stands out is the fact that the money from European competitions went from about 60 million to zero because we weren't in Europe last year. The other thing that stands out here is really the growth in our commercial revenue over the past few years. So I think, again, there's a lot of noise that's being made about all the concerts and stuff that we have to do, but really, when I compare, so in the financial statements that Spurs publish, it's quite handy because you can see the trend for the last 5 years. And our commercial revenue has gone from about 150 million in 2020 to 245 in 2024. So that's a big increase in the money we're able to generate off the pitch. And I think that's what Levy sees as a vital thing in order for us to be competitive on the transfer market. I think he mentions it somewhere in the statement, but I think what he's hinting at is that he needs to continue to drive up that commercial revenue in order to offset any losses we may have if we're not in Europe. See, I think on the top line, that's most of it. I mean, it's looking tough, right, for European qualification for next year. We'd have to beat Frankfurt. We'd have to beat whoever, Ajax or whoever in the semi-finals. Probably Lazio in the final. I don't know, but yeah, it's really going to be quite important for us going forward that we get back into Europe. If I move down our P&L, something that's talked about a lot is our wage to turnover ratio, which I think this year is like 42%, and it's consistently been one of the lowest percentages in the league. So yeah, it's fair to say that we are managing our wage bill in a healthy manner. But I think the thing that people focus on is the 70% cap, right? I can't remember if it's 70% for PSR in the Premier League, but I'm almost certain that it's 70% now for.
I think it's 65% for clubs in Europe and 70% for clubs that aren't in Europe.
Yeah. So it's fair to say we could be spending. I mean, I just did the calculation earlier, right? We could be. So our wage bill last year was 220 million. If that were to increase to 70%, that would be another 150 million that we could be spending a year. So it's a lot of money. And I think what people need to keep in mind is that the correlation to success is not what you spend on transfers; it's what you spend on wages. And I think the fact that last year we got rid of quite a few of our high earners. I mean, the likes of Dyer, the likes of Kane, probably,
and Ndombele, Lo Celso. Yeah,
Lo Celso. That's helped because our wage bill has actually gone down year over year. So yeah, quite healthy on the wage bill point of view. But I think where things start to get complicated is everything that comes after that. we're still spending 160 million on other sort of general and admin expenses. I imagine that's all the costs related to sort of running the stadium. We've got 70 million that we spend. I mean, it's not spent, right? But we've got 70 million depreciation on the stadium. And then as I move down, right, you've got everything related to player incomings and outgoings, so all the amortization. And that really has gone up quite significantly in the last few years. It used to be about 70, 80 million a year. It's now almost 130 a year. So I actually went back and had a look at who we'd actually brought in the past few years. And it makes for somewhat painful viewing. I mean, I'm going back to 2020, right? But our biggest signings in the last 5 years, in Ndombele Sessegnon in 2020, Lo Celso Reguilon 2021, 2022 was Brian Hill and Emerson Royal. Season ending 2023 was Richarlison, Romero. So I mean, we can talk about Romero, right? But Romero is probably one of the better signings we've made. And actually, last season, right? So for the accounts that have just been published, there were a lot of players that we actually officially signed. Because I'm looking at the list here. There's Johnson, Madison, Porro, Kulusevski, Van der Ven, Dragusin. So I think the likes of Van der Ven and Porro we probably had on the loan with an obligation to buy, right? Because they've been with us for longer.
Porro was definitely on loan with an option to buy. Well, option with not an option even, just an obligation to buy. Kulusevski and Bentancur, I think, were finalised that season as well. Whereas Van der Ven was just a straight transfer.
Yeah. So I mean, really, we've. And back to Levy's statement. I mean, he was mentioning the 700 million net spend, right, since we've moved into the stadium. And I think the figures kind of back it up, right? And the issue I see when I look at these accounts is not so much on the way we manage our wage structure. It's really what happens in terms of transfers. So our transfer policy, we've been spending a lot of money in bringing these players in. And I think of the list of all the players that I just mentioned, I mean, there were probably 2 or 3 really good players and a lot of players that just haven't worked out and that we've spent a lot of money on. And at the same time, we've also probably not been very good at selling our players. I mean, if you take out Kane, right, over the past 5 years, who have we actually managed to sell and made a good profit off? I can't actually think of anyone off the top of my head.
I don't think there is anyone beyond Kane who we've made.
And I think that's probably the issue we have when we compare ourselves to other clubs. I mean, we all hate Chelsea. They spend a ridiculous amount of money on wages and on players, but at the same time, they've been able to sell a lot of players for a lot of money. Same goes for Arsenal. Same goes for the likes of, I don't know, Brighton. So really, I mean, when you add it all up, we lost money last year. Profit before tax was negative 26 million GBP. The year before that, we lost 95 million. We've been losing money every year for the past 5 years. I mean, if I add it all up,
I believe it's about 5 years we've had a consecutive loss. But a lot of that is down to
COVID is in there, right? But COVID was in there for everyone.
COVID is in there as well, but that's even including the money that was allocated for COVID, because there were little things allowed.
So I mean, accumulated loss over the past 5 years, profit before tax was actually a loss before tax. It was 330 million, right? And that includes the sale of one of our greatest ever players, Harry Kane, right? Who we sold for, what was that, 90 at the end that we got for him? And that's a true profit,
90 million. Yeah, I think it's around 90 million pounds, 86 million pounds, I think, 100 and something million, euros.
So that's why, I mean, for me, it makes for sort of, I mean, I come from the private sector, right? I mean, if I were to look at this P&L, right, I mean, you would think that this is a company that is struggling, right? I mean, we're losing money every year, we're burning a lot of cash. And it just, to me, it makes me realize like how different the football world is, right, to the real world. They really are operating in a sot of parallel universe where, you know, money is maybe more of a relative term, right? Again, like, I have quite a bit of experience in M&A, right? But I mean, normally when you're evaluating companies, I mean, they're turning a profit, right? And they're showing a positive trend. Here, you know, I mean, obviously there are different ways of evaluating a company, right? I mean, most often it's based on EBITDA, sometimes it's based on revenue. But I mean, this is the kind of P&L that you would see in a startup, right? But we're not a startup; we're 150 years old.
100 and something years old, yeah.
Yes, I mean, again, there's a lot of people saying that Spurs are one of the most profitable clubs, but that's because they're only looking at the top of the P&L, right? You're taking the revenues and you're basically taking out all the wages that we pay out to our players and our staff, the sort of, you know, all the operating costs of running a company. And yeah, when you look at that, we're probably one of the most profitable clubs. But the issue we've had, and based on what I'm seeing here, is really in the transfer market, where we've been very poor. We've been spending a lot of money and we haven't been able to offset that by selling players. And that's why at the end of the day, I mean, I think people, again, because of the fact that we're spending 45% of our turnover on wages, and people are hearing, yeah, but we could be spending a lot more, right? We could be spending 65 or 70%. The issue that I see there is that we just can't afford it financially. So I know in PSR, right, you can exclude certain costs. You can exclude, like, the costs of your any of your training facilities, of your youth teams, of the women's teams, all the money that you're investing into the stadium. So you can exclude it, and probably we are compliant with PSR, and we're probably one of the most comfortable clubs, right, in terms of being compliant with PSR. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, we are losing money, and there's only so long that you can go on as a, you know, as a functioning enterprise losing money before someone has to come and put some money into the company. So over the past 5 years, ENIC did actually put 100 million into the club. I know there's a lot of noise about, you know, the fact that Daniel Levy is taking money out of the club because he's a highly paid chairman. He's the best paid chairman in the league, but I think he was paid 3.5 million last year, which is, you know, it's not up to, I don't know if that's a lot or not for running a Premier League club. If he's the best paid chairman, then it probably is above average. But at the end of the day, he's running a company that is turning over 550 million a year. So even if, for argument's sake, we say he's overpaid, like, how much should a chairman of a massive Premier League club be on? Maybe it's 2 million instead of 3, right? But that's not going to change anything. At the end of the day,
my understanding is that he's paid something 3.5 million, something like that. But his bonuses would normally take him to around 6. But obviously, with no Europe, there were no bonuses.
Yeah, he got a 3 million bonus in 2023. He didn't get one in 2024. I didn't go back and check the previous years to see if he'd got a bonus or not. But yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, I guess the point I wanted to make here was, I mean, when you compare our situation to, I don't know, Manchester United, right, where the Glazers were taking out tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds in dividends. They were paying out vast amounts to pay off the level of debt, right? Because it was a leveraged buyout, so they bought out Manchester United leveraging a lot of debt. At the end of the day, as far as I'm aware, ENIC have never taken money out of Tottenham Hotspur, and they've actually put money into Tottenham Hotspur, right? They put 100 million into the club in 2022. I'm not sure in the past if they've put any money in. They haven't, as far as I can tell, put any money in apart from that in the past 5 years. So I don't know before that if they put money into the club. But I think at the end of the day, what I'm trying to get to here is we're making all these losses, and these can only go on for so long. At some point, ENIC, if we were to continue like this, ENIC would have to put some more money into the club, right? I think they don't want to. and that's probably why you hear all these rumors of, XYZ potentially looking at investing into the
Outside
club.
investment.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, maybe it would be a full buyout. I think we've also heard, a lot about minority investments, maybe, someone taking a 20% stake or something. I think fundamentally that's what they're looking for. They don't want to put their money into the club because they've never had to before. With the way things have been going in the past few years, they've had to invest 100 million, but I don't think they're at a stage where they want to invest any more money into the club. From a P&L perspective, we're losing a lot of money. Looking at our cash flow, I mean, again, our net spend every year is significant, right? On players, we're spending a lot more on players than what we're bringing in through selling players. And yeah, I mean, we've got 79 million of cash now at the end of June 2024. We landed with 79 million of cash in the bank, right? So we've still got a bit of money in the bank, but every year that cash balance is going down. I mean, 2 years before it was 230 million. And again, that 80 million includes sale of Harry Kane for 90 million, which was pure profit. From a cash perspective, we probably didn't receive all of that in one chunk, right? But we would have received some of it. So, I mean, gone down from our cash balance, right? 230 million to 170 million to 80 million now. So I don't know where we're at now, April or towards the end of this season, but it probably hasn't got a lot better. So yeah, I really do expect something to happen sooner rather than later on the shareholder front.
Okay.
Because
my understanding of the bank account is that there is money in there, but that money is basically already spoken for in terms of paying off transfers that we've already agreed to, we've already made. So we're probably still paying off Mickey van der Ven. We're probably still paying money for Christian Romero.
That's a very good point. If you look at our balance sheet, on the transfer receivable side, we've got 56 million that's going to come in within the next 12 months. When you look on the liability side, again, relating to transfers, there's 145 million that needs to be paid out to clubs for transfers within the next 12 months. And after 12 months, there's a further 190 million. So, I mean, we've got a lot more money that's going out than coming in at the moment.
Yeah.
Which was why I was saying at the start, I mean, I'm slightly concerned by what I'm seeing here. And I wouldn't call this like a super healthy situation. Again, we're probably in a much healthier situation than other clubs.
A lot of other football clubs.
We've got massive commitments and payables. We need to pay for all the transfers that we've already made. And I think that's probably a recent trend, right, that we've seen in the football world, where there seems to be, everyone seems to be sort of pushing back at the moment where they actually have to pay out. So, I mean, you'll take, instead of, buying someone up front, then you'll take them on loan for a year with an obligation to buy, or you'll take them on loan and then for 1 or 2 years, and then you'll buy them. But that's just, it's just kicking the can down the street, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, we owe a lot of money on transfers, and we owe, again, like 330 million versus 60. Yeah, so we own 5 times more than we owe 5 times more than what is owed to us. So something has to change. So I mean, that's probably why we're hearing all these rumors about Christian Romero. And I think at some point we are going to need to sell some of our prime assets, because again, if as Levy is saying, and I'm just bring up his statement again. I mean, he's saying we cannot spend what we do not have, and we will not compromise the financial stability of this club. And indeed, our off-pitch revenues, so like all the commercial revenues that I was mentioning at the beginning, have significantly supplemented the lower football revenues this year. So I think the way he sees it is that the club needs to be able to sort of self-fund and be self-sufficient
Yeah.
like it had been for many years. I think before COVID and before the new stadium. And again, if he's not willing to invest any more of his personal money or Enix money to sort of prop up the accounts, then there's only one solution, and that's to look for someone else to invest their money.
Yeah.
And I think we've
But
seen
this
how
is where the issue comes in, isn't it? I mean, so obviously Levy, in comparison to me, Levy is a very rich man, right? But I don't think Levy has hundreds of millions that he can just invest into the club and consolidate his position further. And when it comes to ENIC, I mean, that used to be owned by Joe Lewis and the Tavistock Group, but because of the financial issues that, let's put it nicely, that Joe Lewis has experienced, he's had to divest a lot of that into a family trust. Now, you've gone from having to convince one person to put money in to convincing a group of 5 or 6. And those 5 or 6 people may not be interested in football. They may be very much looking at the bottom line and may not want to be putting something in. When you, as you said, you look at it and as a purely financial thing, in your opinion, as a financial expert, it doesn't look that impressive, right?
No. Yeah, and I mean, Joe Lewis has had other, legal issues recently, so he's probably focusing on that more. I mean, to be honest, like they've never put money into the club. I mean, they purchased the club, right? So they obviously put money into it at the beginning, but ever since then, they've basically managed to build up and in a very impressive manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
A fully sort of self-sustainable club, and they've managed to grow it from a relatively small club to what are we today? Like we're definitely in the top 10, right, of richest clubs, or
number 9. We are number 9 in terms of money making around the world.
But yeah, they've never had to put money into it up until now. I think post-COVID, they kind of had to, so they put 100 million into it. And I think now they've reached the limits of the whole situation, and they need to find someone else to start to invest money into the club. And honestly, again, like, this is just my M&A background here again, but like, what are the realistic profiles that would be able to acquire a club like us today? I mean, it's a rich billionaire, and we can now probably get rid of any Russian rich billionaires given the political situation, or it's basically a sovereign wealth fund from the Middle East, but
a nation state,
nation state. But like, no private equity or investment fund is going to come in and buy a club like us today. I think there are, as far as I'm aware, right, there are very few private equity owned clubs in the Premier League. I don't know, right? I haven't specifically looked into it. I think typically they would do that in, like, I don't know, maybe in the French league, where you can really sort of buy clubs that are, for a relatively small amount of money, and you can really build them up. But we've already been built up, right? So, I mean, why would a private equity firm? I mean, we're losing money, right? So it's tough, right? Because usually PEs would come in and they actually want to make a profit, right? And of course, the only way they're going to make a profit is by building the club up and then selling it on for a profit.
Which is exactly what ENIC have done.
Yeah, which is what they have done. But we've probably reached the limit, right, of how fast we can grow compared to where we were 15 or 12. How long have they been our shareholder? 19 years, is it? 20 years?
2001 they took over, I believe. Yeah.
But they've already built it up, right? So I mean, it would be super risky for someone to come in today and expect that it's going to double or triple in size again in another 3 years. I think if you're buying us today, you're buying us for the exposure you get for owning a Premier League club, and that sort of the media exposure you get. So you're not buying it to make money, because we're not making money.
No. So from a purely financial point of view, Tottenham are a bad investment, right?
I think Tottenham are a bad investment. I think most football clubs are a bad investment.
Yeah.
I think if you really wanted to make money, you would buy a small club in France, in, I don't know, maybe Belgium, maybe the Netherlands or something, and see if you can grow that up. But actually, probably not Belgium or the Netherlands, because it's harder for them to get into the Champions League, right? You want a club that's relatively small that you can invest some money into, and you get them
Yeah.
into, you try to get them into the Champions League, and then you sell for profit. But fundamentally, you're going to be losing money every year. Again, there were probably a few exceptions like Brighton, but they've been like amazing. They've been like the best club in Europe, right? When it comes to selling their players, when it comes to selling their managers to Chelsea.
30 million a time. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
I mean, Brighton are a club that, if you just look for it from a business point of view, I just love what they do, because they're so good identifying players and then developing those players and then selling them on for a fairly significant profit. I mean, how much did they make off Alexis McAllister or Caicedo or someone? You know, each time
yeah,
it was multiples of what they purchased them for.
yeah.
But we are working on a similar data-driven scheme, but we just seem really, really bad at selling players on. Probably because we spend decent money when they come in, so it's very difficult to find someone who's then going to pay a multiple of that to then bring that player to that club.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably grown. Yeah, we grew too quickly, right? When we grew to the point where there aren't that many clubs above us where the players could move on to,
Hmm.
and plus we had, we also have a chairman that doesn't want to sell on the cheap, and I think we've accepted, right, that it's part of our. I mean, we are no longer that small club that that is going to lose a Berbatov or whoever, right? Like now, I think clubs know that if they want to buy one of our players, they're going to have to pay um, top dollar, and it's going to be a tough negotiation. But I mean, yeah, Brighton are doing amazingly, but I think their fans are probably conscious of the fact that they're going to be losing their best player every year or their best two players
Yeah.
every year. I mean, we would be up in arms, right, if we lost Van der Ven and Romero this year, or if we lost, if you lost your top two players every year, then we would be in a tough spot.
Yeah. I mean,
Especially
you'd then be facing calls of being a selling club, which
exactly, which
Spurs
we
absolutely are not, because we're really terrible at selling. So
yeah.
it's, yeah.
I mean, I think, yeah, again, Berbatov was probably the last player that we lost that we didn't want to lose. Or maybe Bale, but I
Gareth
mean,
Bale.
Bale, we got a
Yeah.
lot of money. Yeah, but we didn't want to lose him, but we got a decent amount of money for him at the end
I
of the day.
think we tripled our money on Berbatov as well. So I mean, we did okay there. I mean,
Yeah,
Bale, we didn't just triple; it was like a multiplier of 8 times or something what we paid for him.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, like when I look at this, like the only way out of it. So yes, we can spend more money from a purely PSR perspective,
Hmm.
but from a financial perspective, we can't. We can't afford to do so.
Because the money's
Because
not there, right?
because the money's not there, and because our transfers aren't good enough.
Yeah.
We're spending too much on transfer on players coming in versus what we're able to generate from players going out. So yeah, we simply can't afford it. If we continue to make similar choices in the transfer market, then
Hmm.
we simply cannot afford. So I think it's more. I would almost look at it the other way around. We've made a lot of relatively big transfers, probably for us, right? When you look at the history of our transfers, we've made a lot
Yeah.
of big transfers for us in the past 4 or 5 years. And probably because some of them haven't worked out, we can't afford to spend a lot more than we can on wages. I mean, we could like spend more on wages, but then we'd have to spend a lot less on transfers. And maybe after what's happened this season, you can say, we've managed to bring through Bergwall. We've managed to bring through Archie Gray. Sar's still, I mean, we've still got a relatively young squad, right? So maybe you say, we've got a load of young players. Maybe we don't need to buy anymore. But I think a lot of
Hmm.
people would argue after this season that we're still in need of a pretty major rebuild, right? So I think people would be up in arms again, like if we said we're going to keep the young players, we're going to continue to grow them, and we're not going to sign any big name players.
And I think there's a disconnect in terms of fan thinking and accountancy. So, for instance, if we were to sell, I mean, we paid what, 50 million for Romero. And we've
Yeah,
had him for several seasons now. So each year there's been some amortization of his value, of his contract, right?
yeah,
If we were to sell him for 50 million now, on the books, that would actually go down as a profit, right?
yeah. That's
But
correct.
the fan way of looking at it would say, oh, all we did was break even. We didn't do anything there.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you need to replace him, right? So you need to go out and spend. I mean, honestly, 50
The
million
same again or more.
would be
Yeah.
cheap, right? I mean, he's the World Cup winning captain of Argentina, etc. I mean,
Copa America, World Cup. Yeah.
how much? I mean, how much would it cost for us to buy someone as good as him today? Like, I mean, he's in the peak of his career, right? He's how old is he? 27, something like that.
Yep. 20, I think 26, 27. So I mean,
He's still relatively young. He's still got a good 6, 7 years ahead of him.
Yeah. And in terms of profile, you're probably talking like a Virgil van Dijk type profile when Virgil van Dijk was younger. So you're probably talking about 80, 90 million to purchase a player of that level. But how many clubs are out there that can actually afford to buy a player who's only going to have 2 seasons left on his contract in the summer for that kind of money?
I think that's it, right? He's only got 2 seasons left on his contract, so we need to sell this summer. Otherwise, his value is going to plummet next summer once he's got a year left. But again, it's tough because how many clubs can afford to buy a Christian Romero?
Yeah. And would be willing to, because we know Real Madrid love to sign players exactly like him, but only on free transfers.
Exactly.
Yeah. They'll spend big money on front line players, forward players. They're not going to spend that kind of money on defenders.
No. I can't see him going to Germany. I mean, in Germany, it would basically only be buying maybe one of the Italian clubs, I don't know, and then it's Atleti, Real Madrid, or Barcelona. But I mean, Barcelona can't even sign Dani Olmo, right? Because they haven't got enough money.
Yeah.
Atletico Madrid, I can't see them affording. Haven't Atletico Madrid still got Clement Longley? I think I saw his name pop up the other day when I was watching a Champions League game. So I mean, yeah, they're managing to get by. They're managing to get by. I don't know. That's the problem we have. Like, I don't see anyone being able to afford. I mean, what would be an acceptable amount for Romero? Probably 60.
I'd be happy with 65, 70. But I suspect a large number of Spurs supporters would not be happy with that kind of money, because they'd be saying it's not enough for a 2 times Copa America winner and World Cup winner.
Yeah. But so who can afford that realistically? Only someone in the Premier League. Are we going to sell to the Premier League? No. Maybe you sell to City, but that's probably the only club that you would accept to lose.
Well, City have their own issues with the 115 charges that we're still waiting to find out.
Yeah.
I believe that was all decided in February, and we're still waiting to find out what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And today's date is the 6th of April, everybody. So I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we quickly look at the stadium? I mean, from what I can see, the stadium's been a bit of a game changer for our finances. I mean, our revenue, you're talking about wages to revenue only being at 42%. Our revenue has shot up massively since the stadium came in, right? Because suddenly we've got the capacity to do this multi-revenue model. So we can do games for the NFL, we can do concerts, we can do boxing, we can do all kinds of things at the stadium that bring in more money to the club and increase the top line. But the wages are very low simply because of that. If you compared our current wages to what we had when we were at White Hart Lane, we'd be breaking even maybe.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, honestly, I've only got the financials back to 2020, right? So we'd already moved out of White Hart Lane. Our wages were 220 million last year, and it's true, right? That is still the second highest level that it has ever been at. Yeah, but honestly, I can't remember how much. I seem to have in mind that our match day revenue was like maybe about 60 million or something. So it's probably half what it is now, but which kind of makes sense, right? Because you've got double the capacity. But I think where it's making a massive difference is on the commercial side, right? Because we've got all these concerts coming in, all these boxing and stuff like that.
I think the numbers you're talking about there are purely ticket sales. So then if you add in like concessions and, buying drinks and food and stuff and, before games and after games.
Yeah. One thing I haven't mentioned is we still haven't sold the naming rights, right, to our stadium. Again, I think they were probably holding back on that because they kind of wanted to sell to someone. And it's probably easier for a new buyer to come in and then be able to negotiate a deal with whoever they want to have as, a sponsor for the stadium. But again, maybe if they're not able to sell, as I was suggesting that they probably need to relatively soon, then maybe they are going to, open up that debate again, because there's probably a lot of money that we can make right off the stadium naming rights. I think, I think City have a ridiculously high amount, but on
Yeah.
average, you're looking at least another 60 or 70 million, right?
But isn't it also, it could also be a stumbling block. If you were to sell the naming rights for 100 million for the next 15, 20 years, right, to a Middle Eastern group, let's say out of, just picking it out of from the Bahrainis, for instance, okay, suddenly that rules out any other Middle Eastern group coming in and taking over the stadium, because they're not going to want to have the Bahraini, they don't want to have their club playing in the
Yeah,
Bahraini stadium.
yeah, which is probably why they've held back from doing it. But when
Yeah.
did we move into the new stadium? 2018,
20,
19?
2019, 20, I think, was
Yeah.
just going off the
So,
top of
yeah,
my
so
head.
we've lost a good 5 years worth of however much it is a year. I mean, we've lost
Yeah.
out on a lot of money just because we're holding back and waiting for whoever it's going to be, right? The
Whoever
person.
feels like stepping up and chucking a load of money.
Yeah,
I still keep thinking it should be called the Nike Hart Lane or something like that. It would just make sense always round. If you're
yeah,
hearing me, Nike, I want commission for that.
yeah. It would probably make sense for an American investor, definitely. Yeah, but I don't know. Interesting times. I mean, as I said at the start, I was really surprised when I opened up the financial
Mm.
statements, because I hadn't looked at them for at least 5 or 6 years. Yeah, we're losing a lot of money. The stadium is definitely making a difference, but we
The
need to
stadium's
do
making a
it's
difference, but isn't it also kind of holding back the amount of money we can go and spend, because we've got to pay off some fairly significant debts in terms of building the stadium. We're paying off something like 44 million pounds a year in interest on the loans. Um,
yeah, well, yes, we are paying off, but I think so. We've got about 850 million of debt still on the
mhm.
stadium, um, but the interest rate we've got is like 2%. Hence the 40
Ridiculously
million,
low. I mean,
which is
that
for the
was
current,
genius work.
yeah, for the current context is okay. So on the face of it, paying off 40 million a year does seem like a lot, but it's still quite a good rate
Mm.
given the current climate.
Because
And I'm
Manchester
pretty sure
United are
that I
looking
read
at
them.
doing their stadium.
Sorry.
Manchester United looking at doing their stadium, and they're talking about interest rates they're being offered around 6%, which is
Yeah,
treble what we got.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it has a massive impact at the end of the day. But no, but what I was going to say is I don't think we have to pay back any of the debt on the stadium for at least another 15 years or something. So
Mm.
we've still got time. It's not as if there's like a massive chunk of that 800 million that's coming up in the next couple of years. Um,
So we need to probably looking at that. So we're going to have to pay this money off. We need to sell the club by that date
yeah,
because we don't want to be doing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. So yeah, I think from a debt perspective, I think we're okay. I think things are under control. I mean, the interest rate is pretty low, and there are no sort of big payments
Mhm.
coming up anytime soon. I don't think that's where the issue is. The issue is
Okay.
more like what we have to pay out on all the transfers, upcoming transfers.
Yeah. So the talk in the papers is that, a takeover is a potential thing that could happen at Tottenham Hotspur. Whether you said it's a complete buyout or whether it's a partial buyout, nobody seems to really be sure. But the price that people are talking around is 3.5 to 4 billion pounds. I mean, just off the top of your head, does that make any sense when you look at those numbers?
I think no numbers make sense to me when it comes to football compared to the real world. But then you see, like, I mean, you see the Chelsea owner come in, and how much, like, he paid what, like 4 billion or something ridiculous for Chelsea, and they don't even own their stadium, right? So it's crazy. Or the amount that Ratcliffe had to pay for Manchester United.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the stadium in our books today is being valued at 1.5 billion, and our playing squad is being valued at about 450 million.
Hmm. Then you got the
Um,
training ground,
then you've got the training
which has to
ground
be
and all
worth
this
some
stuff. You've
serious
got,
money.
yeah. So I mean, you're talking at least in just pure assets, right? You're talking probably at least 2.5 billion. Um, so how much did you say? You said four, I think, right? Three and a half
They're
or four?
talking 3.5 to 4 billion is the the number that's being bandied around.
Yeah, that doesn't sound so crazy when you because you also need to factor in the fact that we have 850 million of debt, right? So
Yeah.
that would come off the purchase price at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not that surprised by the amount. Fundamentally, I'm still surprised that people would want to put so much money into what is
Into
an
something like
operating
this.
business.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that people have their reasons. I'm sure the Chelsea
Okay.
owner has his
So
reasons.
what I'm hearing at the end of the day, what I'm hearing from you is the football world is absolutely crazy when it comes to finances, because although Spurs are being lauded as this massive financial powerhouse, realistically, if you were to compare it to other businesses, other sectors, it would be looked at as not that impressive. Is that right?
Definitely. No, definitely.
So you're not going to be talking to any of your clients and recommending that Tottenham Hotspur go and go on their list of portfolio.
No, no, but that's. I mean, I think again, like how many people can afford to come in and buy us today? I mean, it's such a specific profile.
Yeah.
Again, you're not looking at you're looking at acquiring a loss-making club, right? So that means that every year you need to put money in. Um,
Hmm.
Plus, you'd have to plow. Yeah, you'd have to plow in a lot of money. I mean, if Levy were to open up and say and let someone come in with like 20% investment, I mean, they would want hundreds of millions on top of that to be put into buying players, right, and making a competitive squad. Um, I don't know. It's such a tough one because there are there are very limited people that I think could actually buy the club. Um,
Yeah. And when it comes to nation states, there are certain states you can immediately rule out, like Saudi Arabia have already got Newcastle, Qatar
yeah,
have got PSG, Abu Dhabi is Manchester City. You can
yeah,
immediately rule them out. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's very, very difficult. It's something that's been on my mind for a few months. Is like, if Spurs were to get bought out, who could possibly do it? And I was like, well, Middle East money potentially, American money, but right now that's not looking like a
yeah,
safe bet. So I mean,
yeah,
who else? Who's left?
yeah. No, I mean there
Can't
aren't.
have a West Ham style Icelandic billionaire, can we? So
Yeah, and again, like I mean, people won't leave you out, but like look at Ratcliffe, right? He was seen as British billionaire,
savior.
interesting savior, right? And he comes in and all he's doing is cutting costs because they have exactly the same issues that we have. They've been spending way too much money on wages, on transfers that haven't worked out, Casemiro, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like be careful what you wish for. But for those that are leaving out, I would say that things will have to change at some point in the
Mm.
not too distant future. Or Levy are going to have to put some more money on the table, but from by all accounts, they don't want to do that. If they don't want to put more money on the table, they'll have to open up and let someone else come in sooner rather than later.
So at some point soon, we are going to have to see a change.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
definitely in the next 2-3 years max.
Oh, it could be an exciting period for Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah,
Or
let's see.
scary, or completely scary.
We'll
Who
see.
knows? Knowing Spurs, absolutely butthole clenching scary is what I'm expecting for it
Yeah,
to be. But yeah. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for. I do believe I am more intelligent now than I was at the start of this conversation. So, talking to smart people, always a good way to go. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will be back with the standard kind of content we normally do. I believe Sam, as a Spurs fan, might just be popping in from time to time when he's got
I'll
the
try to.
available
Yeah,
minutes. Yeah.
I'll try to.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sam. And
Thanks, mate.
as
Thanks,
always,
Damien.
everybody, come on,
Hopefully, I
you
didn't scare
Spurs.
you off.